one of the things, especially for those who are a little bit newer to the major gift process, is really making sure that you have institutional buy-in, that your board of directors, your CEO, your staff understand the value of what you're doing, and especially if you're a newer major gift program, that the first year, you're not going to have a huge dollar goal. It takes time. Major gifts can take 6 months, they can take a year, they can take 18 months, they can take 3 or 4 years, depends on the individual and so forth. So making sure that we have that, making sure that we have the resources available to us, the budget to travel, the budget to go see people, the budget to take people to lunch, all those different things. And to make sure also that we also have some resources. We can, depending on the size of your organization, you can do a prospect overlay to indicate individuals in your database, if you have a database that have specific wealth and what their gift range and their capacity might be. Certainly there's lots of information about that. I use Google. I use LexisNexis. We have it available at our university, Western Michigan University, and I'll go and Google the person I'm going to go see, but I'll also go to LexisNexis and look through newspaper clippings and stuff like that. I'll just try to find out as much as I can. And certainly, you do want to. I also read publications. I'll read Crane's Detroit Business, because a lot of our alumni are from Detroit, so it's a really good resource for me. And then I don't want to give volunteers a short shrift, because I do think that volunteer interaction is important. I work at a large university where we do work with our volunteers, but it's pretty doggone staff-driven. Okay. But I do have volunteers that help me get in the door. Certainly, we'll talk a little bit about that too. Okay. My perspective is at a national university. We have alumni in all 50 states, but I'll try to talk to you about ways that we can scale that to a local organization, regional organization. But let's just say you want to travel to out of state. I'm in Michigan and I want to go to California and visit some of our alumni. Typically, what I would do before I ever picked up the phone and tried to make an appointment is I would send a letter. And it's in the jump drive. That is on the jump drive. There's a handout. There's a letter that it introduces me and talks about what my purpose is and so forth. But I'll mail this letter. If I'm going to California, I'll probably send it like a month before I am going to visit, because I've got a lot of follow-up I'm going to do before I actually get there. And we'll talk about that. So my letter says I want to inform the individual I want to go and see about our organization. I want to assess their opinions about our organization. And then the third one, and this is a tricky one, so be careful, I want to ask for their advice. Now, when you say you want to ask for their advice, you really need to be sincere about it and be able to validate that, and we'll talk about that too. But I do, when I do ID calls, I am asking for advice, I'm asking for input, and making it very clear that this is not a solicitation. We're here to talk with you. We're here to find out what you think about Western Michigan University or the American Red Cross or whatever it might be. Okay. So you've got the handout, but basically it says, I'll just read a little bit if you don't have it. It talks about Western, and this is actually from the Dean of our College of Education. That's where I worked at Western before I moved into Foundation Relations. So this is from the Dean, David England, and it says that our president wants us to establish better contact with our alumni and friends. It introduces me, as I was the new development director when this was sent out. This was in 2001, and a little bit about my background. And then it says that it's really important that we maintain contact with our alumni. It would really mean a lot to me as the dean if you would take time. He's coming to your area. He would like to ask you some questions about your affiliation or your status as an alumni, what you did at the university and so forth, a little bit about your career if that's appropriate, and ask for your advice and so forth. But again, it's coming from a person of authority is the point. It's not coming from me. So it could come from your president, it could come from your CEO. And I found that to be pretty effective and a way to sort of get your foot in the door. Now, there are other ways to make that first contact besides a letter. Letters can be a little formal. It depends on who you're trying to reach and so forth. At a university, postcards are great because you've got wonderful campus buildings that people remember. And so we have a regional part of campus called East Campus, which is all the old classroom buildings, which you don't use anymore, but it's still standing there. So we always, when we send these postcards, it's usually East Hall, which is on East Campus and so forth, and we try to do that. Another thing I will do sometimes is I'll send email. Sometimes I'll send email in concert with a letter. I'll send a letter first, and then I'll send an email later, a little bit closer to the visit. But we know that a lot of folks just don't, get to their postal mail, especially if they're really busy. A lot of the really high-profile executives that I would go and see, they don't get to their mail for a month at a time. It's crazy, So thinking that they would be able to, respond to that. So take a look at who you're trying to see, and if there's someone that you believe is incredibly busy, they may not respond to that letter. But the whole idea is that even if they got your letter and they looked at it and said, "Who's this guy?" and they threw it away, they're probably going to remember it at least when you call them. And that's what you want to do. You want to create an environment where they're anticipating the contact, because what you don't want them to be is surprised, startled when you make the phone call. You want them to be anticipating it. And they still may not want to meet with you, which is fine, but at least it's going to be a little bit more of a natural transition, okay? And the other thing I like to do when I send letters and so forth, when I send contact, is I give people actually an opportunity to contact me, which I've said this a couple of times, and people have said, "Really? You do that?" But I have had some busy executive types who said to me, "Well, I'm coming to Denver next month, and I'll send it to someone, the CEO of a hospital or something like that. And I'm going to be in town these 2 days." I say that in the letter, and I'll say, "If you'd like to set up a time to meet with me, please call me at." And sometimes you get type A folks who will say, "I kind of would like to meet with this guy. I can only do it then," so they get their administrative assistant on the horn and saying, "Can you have breakfast with Sarah, at 7:30 on Tuesday?" And sometimes that will sort of do your job for you. That will get you appointments where you won't even have to. I will say that's the minority, but you do have folks who will do that. So another way, let them opt in, let them contact you if you want to. And if you can see this is a postcard. This is actually not my postcard, obviously, but this is my successor in the College of Education, Sherry Verame. And what she does, which is brilliant, I never did this, never thought about this. She sends a postcard for folks she's going to go see, and it's got a picture on it. Okay? And when you think about it, it's a great idea because her constituency is a lot of retired teachers. So she's in the College of Education, retired folks who have some resources. Sometimes she'll talk to current teachers, current educators as well. But so the point is that she's probably going to go to their home. Okay, so do they need to be comfortable with her? Yeah. So my joke is, and we have a very collegial atmosphere, attitude and so forth. But I said, one of the nice things about that is, she's a very warm face and so forth, and looks very trusting. And I said, well, I said, at least you certainly don't look like an ex-murderer. So people would hopefully say, oh, sure, you can come visit. So that's the whole idea, and I thought that's a great idea to do something like that. You're trying to bridge that area of unfamiliarity between yourself and your suspect. Okay.
Could I just ask a question?